Welcome back to the Belligerent Duck. I'm Thomas, and today unfortunately we can't show you a battle report because, like many of you I guess, we have to practice social distancing. So today instead I'm going to show you my very first Age of Sigmar army, Death. So why did I start Age of Sigmar with Death? Well, because one of the reasons was that I always liked the vampire lords, the vampire counts I think they were called in the fantasy setting in the old world as it's called now. But I never wanted to start Warhammer Fantasy because this was just another complicated rule set for me. I was already playing Warhammer 40,000 and I just wanted never to start another complicated war game. Like the old fantasy book was about I think 5 to 7 centimeters thick to learn, and with all the complicated rules for the different kind of warfare you had, and you could flank other units and stuff like this. So I never wanted to start that. But I really liked the vampires, especially those two models here. It's like Isabella from Karstein, and I think he's called Vlad from Karstein. And that's the reason I got him for Age of Sigmar as well and started the Vampires army, because I really like those sculpts. And I mean, they're fine cast, but they're still very cool. And at the very beginning, those two Karstein vampires had some synergies with them. So if one died, the other one got stronger, and something like this. I can't remember exactly. That's the main reason I started vampires, because Death, I always liked vampires a lot, and so those were my first leaders, so to say. Well, the next thing I needed after having leaders was troops. And what else to use than good old skeletons? And there's also the possibility, or there was the possibility, to take zombies, but I never really liked zombies, and especially painting zombies. So I went for skeletons. And because I'm a bit lazy, didn't want to paint 60 skeletons with layering, and it was the time before contrast paints. So I decided to go with a very easy paint scheme. Just take the skeleton, prime it in, I think it was either Sentry Dust or Skeleton Bone from Army Painter, I can't remember exactly. Paint in some colors, and I went for dark red and a purple, with the whole army is more or less around dark reds and purple regarding colors, and wash over it. I think it was done with Quacks Earthshame, not 100% sure, some brown, dark brown wash, and then dry brush everything with bone color again. So I think it looks kind of well for a very easily painted skeleton, and especially when you think about having to paint a lot of skeletons, about 60, I think about 60 skeletons, that's a good way. Now I will do it with contrast paints, I guess. The only thing is, if I want to get this used look that trap brushing can achieve, you might want to wash everything again and dry brush it again. So it does not really save you a lot of time with contrast paints right now. Except when you go for clean skeletons, then it's perfectly fine to do this. So I had my vampire leaders and some troops, in the form of skeletons. Now I wanted some vampires. And after having a look at the kind of old sculpts of this Finecast, Blood Knights, and the price tag especially, I was about how about no? And decided to go for some conversion I've seen online. So I decided to go and get some high elves, I think they call the Knights of Caledor or something, and transform them a bit. Not a lot, as you can see. I just removed some of the some parts here with gems, added a skull on the back, as you can see here, and gave them a different color scheme. So I painted them again in red and purple, which is kind of my army, which are kind of my army colors. Added some blood on the lands in front, and I think they make quite a good proxy for the Blood Knights that are about, I think it's €8 or something for 5, and I got those cheap after Age of Sigmar was released, and one of the local stores sold them off for about, I think, 20 euros for 5. So this was kind of a bargain. They're out of print, unfortunately, already. So if you want to go for an alternative for Blood Knights, you might have to look somewhere else. So I'm also stuck with 10 instead of 15. I wanted to go for 15 at some points, but they are not available anymore. Yes, I guess it's a very good and cheap alternative to the kind of also ugly Blood Knights that are actually produced in Finecast right now. And of course, as I did not want to put a lot of effort into painting them, you can see that the color scheme is more or less like dry brushed on a black undercoat, except the purple parts that are just layered in, and kept kind of easy. Like some metallics are there, and the red armor and the horse are just dry brushed onto the black undercoat. Continuing with vampires, of course I also got some Vargeists, which are also kind of easily just dry brushed on. I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, also a black undercoat where I just dry brushed different colors of off-white onto it to give this kind of very light-skinned appearance, and then highlighted some of the reds for the talons, and of course the mouth. And yeah, I liked them a lot on the tabletop when they're ripping apart orcs in groups of 6. In groups of 3 I'm not really convinced of them, so I would also take them in a group of 6. And in one of the older battle reports you also see them killing enemies with Isabella, especially like back in the days when Mystic Shield actually improved their saves from a 5+ to a 4+, and there was also the ability to get the ignore wounds on a 5+ artifact, Ring of Night or something, I can't remember, it's years ago, that made them kinda resilient and very powerful. The only downside I really don't like with these models is their kind of special ability, which if they kill a model they can roll a dice again, and then on a 6+ they have something that's not really useful in my opinion. Now there's another leader which is not a vampire, but buffs skeletons quite well and also has access to very nice spells from the generic death list. This is a Necromancer. The miniature is from Reaper Bones, and I got it kinda cheap because I think Philip bought some and bought one of those with him. I think he looks a bit better than the GW Necromancer. I guess it's just my opinion though. And I also kept him in black and red, which is like the colors of my army. Yeah, he's not super powerful, but the buff to skeletons and the access to very nice spells from generic death lore make him a valuable asset. Continuing with even more vampires, the Covenant Throne, which is one of, model-wise, one of my favorite models, I think, of all time. I mean, it's just so cool that it's like this throne full with 3 vampire ladies riding, being afloat by ghost riders more or less into battle. They have this kind of pool of blood up there. This was one of the models I really enjoyed painting, and I also like the little details, like this one is scrying in a pool of blood. She's drinking a goblet full of blood, and right there we have some cushions, maybe I can show them. And you see the viscera coming out of the cushions because they're all filled with like intestines from different victims. Painting this was also, well, the whole thing was kind of easy, just washing a white undercoat with, I think it was before they released the Nighthound colors, so I think it was some diluted wash and then brushing it again with some off-white, doing the metallics right there, also just brushing the bone structure, and then again we have reds and violets which fit the colors of my army. This was a fun to paint. On the tabletop I'm not really fond of it, to be honest. I think it's nice, but it's not good, but fun, and I love the model anyway. And now for the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, which is one of my MVPs in nearly every game I wield him. He's an absolute beast, doing a lot of damage, one of the few rend -2 weapons I think this army has. talking about the Legion of Blood, which I usually play. It was also a fun model to paint. The fleshy parts, the muscle, was also more or less dry brushed on a black primer, and it was a fun and a joy. It was fun and a joy to paint, like all the different musculars, the muscles in there, and the bones. This was really, really cool. I also enjoyed painting the vampire on top of it. As you see, the sword is broken because when I moved from my old flat to the new one, I had it in a box, and one of my cats really likes to sit on and in boxes. Yeah, I mean, all that bubble wrap didn't help, so we have a broken sword right here, unfortunately. I still have the tip, so maybe I can kind of glue it on. It's a little bit bent though also, so I might just leave it like that. Yeah, he's really, really good in-game and fun to paint. I'm sometimes thinking of getting a second one. On the other hand though, it's a huge model. It took quite some time to paint it to a standard I like, and also not to waste too much time on painting him. So might just leave it at having one. So last but definitely not least, Neferata, the Mortag of Blood, more or less the general of my army, the Legion of Blood. She was fun to paint. The mount, not so much. As you can see, we have a lot of different skulls in between the bone, the structure of the mount itself. This was a pain to paint. Nice. But she herself was fun. I also really like the model. On the tabletop, I think she's doing fine. I think Manfred could be a bit stronger, but as I wanted to play the Legion of Blood, I went for Neferata. I read the book. I think it was called Neferata or something. But honestly, I didn't like her so much in the book. I think, I don't know, it didn't capture the vampire stuff for me. I like the old vampires, the aristocratic vampires who try to do intrigue and have the courts and something like this. Like in the 19th centuries, the vampires in London and stuff like this, like the old stories. But this book was more about her and being super violent and killing everyone, which wasn't to my taste. I still like the model and I still like her rules, and I think she's not mistaken, she's she's the first vampire, so it totally made sense to make a vampire army while having her with me. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed this army showcase, and if you want to see non-battle reports during this time of quarantine from us, give us some suggestions what you would like to see. Maybe you want to see different armies, or maybe you want to have some painting advice from either Philip or me. Just write it down in the comments below. And if you did not yet, please consider subscribing to our channel. And if you do, thank you very much, and click the bell notification icon to get notified. Well, happy hobbying and stay healthy.